Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for visiting the Bunny Research. We will talk on exploding transparency today, and let's see what we can learn from this. This presentation is based on the article Leading in the Age of Exploding Transparency by Melisha Swift, November 29, 2023, MIT Sloan's Management Review. Information flows today at the speed of light, and it's moving far too fast for many leaders to grapple with. Whether it is social media channels making company dirty laundry public, or internal technology system throwing an array of decontextualized data onto the screens of folks unprepared to interpret it, technology is meaningful, eroding the information advantage leaders have enjoyed since the dawn of the working world. Knowledge is power, and today everyone seems to have it. Greater availability of information of workforce issues like layoffs or diversity, as well as business performance metrics at the micro and macro scales, means that the average worker is getting hit with more bad or at least uncomfortable news. For leaders and employees alike, this is prompting tough conversations that create a meaningful source of stress. I hear from the clients over and over that even the most seasoned leaders often struggle to engage in these challenging conversations, causing both parties to walk away more unsettled than when they started. Today, leaders' actions are immediately discussed. Leaders' actions are immediately discussed across internal and external platforms in writing and on a massive scale. The internal messaging application Slack alone boasts 300,000 messages sent per second, and 145 million people log on to Microsoft Teams for similar discussions each day. 55 million people use company feedback platform Glassdoor every month, and 774 million are on LinkedIn to talk about work. Social media internet content tagged with the quick talk hashtag had been viewed an astounding 41 million times as of April 2023. The days when reactions to strategic leadership decisions were confined to a bit of water cooler grumbling are long gone. 4 practical strategies for leaders. 4 pathways to sanity and clarity in a hyper-transparent world. Ease leaders' burden by dialing up the right kind of organizational honesty. This is the first point. It might seem impossible to stanch the flow of difficult conversations, but a client illuminated a simple strategy for me recently. It is easier for our leaders when we are more honest. That way they just don't have to have as many tough conversations. There is such truth to this statement of people If people will see the reality of a given situation anyway, communicating about that reality from the jump means that individual leaders won't have to scramble the backpedal when confronted with their teams. Now, does this entail communicating every single detail of every situation to every audience? Absolutely not. What it does mean is changing the frame of every communication from what is it that when we want people to believe to what are the basic facts and pieces of context that people will need to make smart decisions in these situations. This changes the nature of the information cascade. 2. Reframe communications on a one world basis, ending the internal external distinctions. It is often said that we live in a world of context collapse where information travels instantly through seemingly disparate circles of communication that would have been disconnected or at least time sequenced in the past. Leaders used to have the luxury of communicating internally in steps before taking the message to select outside figures in a thoughtful progression. Today, once something happens, they can reasonably assume that it will be known internally or externally in a short order across a broad array of audiences. Shaping communications in a unified manner not only creates a stable messaging in a leak-prone world but also generally raises the standard of internal communication efforts. As internal messages are pressure tested with the same rigor as the statements released to the outside world. Even if an organization has not reorganized its communications functions accordingly, individual leaders can work to ensure that their messaging remains consistent across internal and external audiences. Number 3. Go back to the future on basic communication skills, but add 21st century emotional intelligence as well. Although the hyper-transparent world is the outgrowth of a host of quickly evolving technologies, the ultimate leadership superpower in this context is a distinctly low-tech one. Being able to speak or write a simple clear sentence, like a bell cutting through the chatter on a crowded town square. Leaders with excellent basic communication skills are simply better at making themselves heard through the noise. Pithy verbal communications are particularly demanded in situations where stimulus is coming through quickly and frantically, and information might range from somewhat to completely inaccurate. We need the ability to shout, freeze, and have everyone stop and think. Leaders who have historically been allowed to hem and haw or bloviate at length will find themselves quickly overrun by the punchiness of contemporary communication streams, whether or not these streams are true or helpful to business progress. All that said, being factual and logical isn't enough on its own. For instance, information that triggers an emotional response is more likely to be reposted on social media. Causing it to often circulate faster and more broadly. Leaders who were taught to communicate coolly and unemotionally might find that their messages don't move through the organization as fast as peers. More emotionally inflected statements. In a hyper-transparent world, we might even want to look to the neuroscience findings that caution us that separating rational and emotional thinking is a false dichotomy altogether, and thus we should stop trying to craft completely emotionless leadership messages. Number 4. Build your judgment muscle and your teams. Let's take as a given that the transparent nature of the world and workplace will only increase from here on out. In such an environment, your ability to quickly and sensibly decide what to do with a piece of information, your judgment becomes a critical tool for survival and success. Leaders will want to consciously work on this skill themselves, but given that they cannot be in every one of a multiplying set of conversations all the time, they will also want their teams to get better at judgment. A bank that I worked with some years ago started to offer frontline workers some of the same leadership development opportunities it had historically reserved for top executives, based on the rationale that with greater availability of information, those workers would be making the same kind of calls that used to be made many steps up the chain. There is a huge value on being able to trust your team to do the right thing, even when confronted with strange and conflicting information when you are not around. Leading in a hyper-transparent world. Leading in a hyper-transparent world doesn't have to feel like piloting a rickety spacecraft through an asteroid belt of conflicting, incomplete, and often emotion-laden information. Management is not perfect, but they try to be pretty honest, which I totally appreciate. They are really working on doing the right thing, and you can see it day to day. Wish you best of luck. We are business consultants based in Pakistan. If you need to accelerate your organizational performance and transform your company to meet the upcoming business challenges for a better tomorrow, please contact us for a turnaround. You can find us at rabbaniresearch.net. Trust Rabbani for quality competence. Thank you so much.